I mean, one thing I'll say, and then I'll stop talking so much, is that part of the issue is that limited cross-racial contact ferments stereotypes. And so as we've seen housing segregation intensify, school segregation intensify, there's less opportunity for people to have the kind of cross-racial contact that breaks down stereotypes. When you have schools and neighborhoods that are predominantly black, I was talking to a colleague the other day who confided in me that she she grew up in Kentucky, that she'd never seen a black student until her freshman year in college. And so there are the kinds of racial isolation that we see in daily life. I would say particularly for white students or white children can be damning in terms of reifying stereotypes that we see through the media, et cetera. We certainly could do a cleansing of the media. That might help too.
In a lot of my work, especially with schools, we talk about implicit bias, right? And so I think that goes to the heart of what you're talking about, the fact that many of us as Americans have been exposed to constant images that personify African Americans and associate them with bad things, right? Whether it's poverty, whether it's criminalization, so that even when you see someone in front of you that doesn't embody that, what is signaled in your brain, whether you want it to or not, which is like the key lesson there, is that you could be the best racial justice advocate out there, like these are my values, this is what I'm about, but the fact that you have been exposed, just like everyone else, to constant images, constant narratives, it is downloaded in your subconscious that when you are not on guard, when you are making quick decisions, when you are not conscious, you will often sort of match those up with those stereotypes, and actually the outcomes that you put out in the world can manifest those stereotypes and those prejudices. And so it can help to have counter-stereotypical exemplars and opportunities to connect with other folks from different communities, but we are talking about an entire culture that we have to sort of deprogram and really think. So it is active work. I think that's the lesson that at least I try to convey in the work that I do, is that if you see the world and it's not the way that you want it to be, then that requires action to get there. It requires action in our personal interactions, right? So when things are being brought up, are we challenging ideas? Are we reading literature that expands our viewpoints, that offers different perspectives? Are we watching movies that expand our viewpoints, offer different perspectives, right? So like there's personal work to be done, as well as when I see it in how we've hired. What are we going to do differently? How am I going to examine the ways in which, the way our hiring process, which we think is normal, it's simple, right? Someone comes in interviews, and we hire the best person for the job, but the best person is often deeply socialized by what you've seen, right? You might make a connection. They went to the same school I did. They're good. They're a great candidate, but not really dealing with the fact that that school is predominantly white as well, right? And the access that people have to that school, right? And then the ways in which that's situated. So there are things that we can do in terms of being very conscious about how we can make fairer decisions, how we can use data to help inform us, and how when someone confronts us and says that we're not doing something that matches with our ideals and values, really doing an interrogation of ourselves to do better. So I absolutely agree with that point, but there's a lot of work to do, and it takes all of us to do our part.
One thing I would add on that in terms of how we work, again, civil rights traditionally for the last 50 years or 70 years has been through litigation and that type of thing. In about the last 5 years, I've established at John Marshall a restorative justice program. And so we're sending our law students into the schools in various areas of Chicago to work on truancy issues, disciplinary issues, and things like that. And many times it's the first time that more affluent law students have ever been in the neighborhood. And we've found out it's often the first time that students in those neighborhoods are coming into contact with people from the suburbs. We've had some field trips into the Loop to the law school. It's the first time many of these kids have ever been to the Loop. And so this isolation the segregation breeds is really contagious. And I think one of the things that restorative justice brings in this area, and we think of restorative justice in mainly the criminal area and the disciplinary area and things like that, but in the civil rights area, that the idea of restorative justice is getting a conversation going between the wrongdoer, the victim, and primarily the community, and bringing the community in for a discussion where everybody is heard, everybody's views are discussed, and then a solution that everybody can live with. I think it's really crucial in the civil rights area because, again, we've seen imposing these things with people who resist them has some benefits, and I'm certainly not against injunctions and damage actions and things like that. I applaud them. I started out as a litigator, and I believe in litigation. But I do think if you can get people together and they can discuss their fears and their aspirations and everybody mutually work out a solution, as in the school situation, that takes us a long ways.